Hello everyone, and welcome to our final session of Parenting Through a Pandemic. I hope that you've had a chance to use some of the activities that we've had in the past few weeks, and maybe some of you might have tried out some of the movement assessment tool that I gave you last week. Please ask any questions in the chat because it's last chance. Any questions or any comments? If you've tried anything, if your children enjoyed them, or if there's something that they didn't enjoy, or if you actually changed something, got the idea from our sessions and then thought, well, I'd come up with something with my child, something that they might have enjoyed anyway, that you could share with others. So we've looked at, over our sessions, we've looked at why movement's important, and I hope I've given you a clear rationale as to why we need to do lots of movement with our children. It's what children's bodies were made to do, and it helps develop their brain architecture, as we talked about in that first session. And it helps them be ready for learning, as well as being enjoyable. And it's actually good for their mental health and well-being, being out and about doing physical activities. We then looked at actually what does being physically literate mean, and lots of activities that you can do with your child to make sure that they get a range of different skills, so that they can then go to a sports club, or they can go to the park with their friends, and they have the skills to just play and enjoy themselves. We're not necessarily talking about making people Olympic champions, although that might be nice. But what we're talking about is children who will go out and play with other children, and then as adults will be ready to go out and play with their own children. Because if your children don't play and don't enjoy playing, they're unlikely to play with their own children in the future. So it becomes a vicious circle that we have more and more sedentary children, which, as you saw from the first week, can cause all sorts of problems later in life. And then we looked at how you might look at the areas in which your child has difficulty and might need a little bit more help. Because as we said, movement isn't something that children just develop naturally. They develop it in the same trajectory, but they do need lots of practice. Thousands and thousands of hours of playing and practicing are what hones children's skills. If you think about when children were learning to walk, how often did they stand up and fall down on their bottoms and then get back up again and keep on trying and trying and trying until they could get some stability to be able to move? And it's a long time before they can actually walk confidently. So you as a parent aren't constantly watching to see that they're going to fall down. So, you know, having the chance to practice those skills, and then for you to be able to look and think, well, actually, maybe they need a little bit of help with their object control skills. As we said, they are the hardest ones. Or it might be that they need a little bit more help with their stability, because stability is the one that underpins the other skills. I can't reach out to hit a ball in tennis if I haven't got the stability to actually hold my balance while I'm reaching out to do that. But today what we're going to look at is how we can actually put physical activity into learning and help make learning sometimes a little bit more fun for children, a little bit more memorable, and also raising their physical activity levels. And it's interesting, sometimes when we do things like this, children don't see it as learning, but they are actually learning quite a lot. Sometimes they just see it as playing and having fun, but they're learning about maths, they're learning about English. And as I said, with some of the activities that I'm going to show you, can easily adapt them to other areas of the curriculum, or other areas that you think your children would have lots of fun learning about. So I'm going to start off with a few maths activities, and then we'll drift into a few English activities. One of the interesting things with maths is that a lot of children find maths difficult, and maths has this aura about it that you're either good at maths or you aren't, as if it's something that we genetically pass down to our children. And actually that's untrue. Everybody can be good at maths, but a lot of the idea around maths is that we have something that is termed maths anxiety, and a lot of people are scared about maths And often that comes from when we have things like mental maths, where children are asked questions and are expected to answer very, very quickly back. And actually, the more anxious they get, the less likely their brains are to be able to work out the answer, because they're so stressed, they get almost a block and they can't give the answers. So what a lot of these games do is they make maths fun, and children are so busy running around, they're forgetting the fact that they're a little bit scared or worried about maths. And that can only be a good thing. I think lots of the best mathematicians in the world are actually very slow thinkers. They take a long time to work things out. So some of our mental maths tests, when we want things very quickly, actually work against children learning maths and loving maths. Because, you know, if you ask a child about what they think maths is, they'll often say it's about being right or wrong. If you ask a mathematician what maths is about, they'll say it's about finding patterns and it's interesting and exciting. And often children don't get to see that. So hopefully with some of our activities, you'll see some ways of helping them learn, and you might see some ways that when they come back with homework from school, you might look at it and think, oh, I could make a really good fun way of doing that. They can do all the learning and then they can go and write the answers in their books and do it in a different way. So one of the things I'm going to look at first of all is just a little bit of counting. Children often will remember things better if they have a rhythm or a chant to them, a little bit like the alphabet song. When children learn the alphabet, they often learn the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and they're actually singing a song with sounds. They don't really know that it's the alphabet, but from singing that and remember, they actually start to remember it. So we're going to have a little go with some maths games that are just chanting and counting. So a little bit like what we would have called a hand jive with dancing. So I'm going to move back so you can see me. So in this game, what we're going to do is we're going to tap on our legs and then click with our fingers. So I don't know how many of you are joining in, but please do. So snap, snap, click, click, tap, tap, click, click, tap, tap, click, click. So now let's think we might, with little ones, they might start counting in twos. So let's do in twos. So we're going to go 2, 4, 6, 8. They might also count in 10, so let's do it in tens. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. As they get better at it, we start to go faster. But anything that your child needs to remember and learn, like some of the times tables, can often be set to music or set to a rhythm, and they can actually remember them better. You can also do the prime numbers, for example, with older children. And often in tests, at least in the UK, it might be children get asked what are the first 10 prime numbers. And I've seen children who've learned this way actually sitting at their desks and doing a little click thing and then going, oh yeah, and then remember, because the chant and the little actions help them remember what those numbers are. So actually doing activities like that, singing lots of numbers, all those kind of things make a big difference to children actually being able to remember some of those things. One of the other things that you can do with children, which is really powerful, involves getting out and about. And you can do this and adapt what you ask the children to do, literally depending on how old they are. So it might, especially where you are and you have fantastic weather at the moment. My son, who lives in Dubai, was telling me it was absolutely beautiful this week. Him and his wife went on a staycation, and my grandson was most cheesed off because he wanted to come to Abu Dhabi and he wasn't allowed to. But he was saying that the weather is absolutely beautiful there at the moment. So you do have that fantastic opportunity to be able to get out and about and look for maths that you find in the environment. So it can be just things like, how many steps are there up to your door? If you live in apartment blocks, how many steps to get up to the first level, and counting with the children. So, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then it might be as you come down, you count backwards. So 4, 3, 2, 1. Then it might be saying to the children, let's look at how many cars we can see as we walk around the block. When I was last visiting a raised hand. Okay. Did somebody want to ask something? Elisa, do you want to ask something? No? Please feel free, Elisa, if you would like to ask any questions, that would be fine. So things like, last time I went, when we were coming home in the car from school, sometimes just to keep him awake, we would count school buses, and we would try to see how many of these yellow buses we could see on the way home. And he got quite excited because we were getting into some really big numbers. And for about a week, he would say, let's count the buses, the school buses. But then he decided he would count the other buses he could see. So it became a game, but he was initiating that game, and he was excited about playing that game. So you might go outside and say, oh, well, let's go for a walk, and let's see how many taxis we can see. Let's see how many red cars we can see. Let's see how many of this type of car we can see. So children, not only are they counting, but they're actually sorting, because they know that car isn't one of the ones we're counting and that one is. So they're actually looking at the properties and features of a car and deciding whether or not it goes into the set that they are looking for. And being able to sort and categorize things is a very important one for children. It might be that we say, oh, well, yesterday we counted red cars. As I say, let's see if we can count, let's see how many bicycles we might see today. And we might say, let's see how many dogs we see, how many big dogs, how many small dogs. Let's use our fingers to keep track of how many we see. So these are just things you can do when you're out and about. And a lot of it is around just having that conversation with your child, and looking for maths together. Things like how many paving stones can we hop along? We might do hopscotch, we might jump on the lines, we might look at different shapes in the ground. So who can see a rectangle? And then saying to the child, I can see a rectangle, that paving stone is a rectangle. It's got 2 long straight sides, 2 short straight sides. Can you see any rectangles? So the child might then start looking at windows and doors. So you're just looking at those different shapes. And then it might be some bricks, or the pavement or the sidewalk might have different shapes. So they're looking at those and then saying, you know, we've been looking at shapes with curved straight lines. Can we see any shapes with curved lines? And then it might be looking at some of the beautiful gates with the wrought iron patterns on them. Can they see any patterns there? It might also be, if they're at the play park, there are often curved bars going up around the slides and things like that. So can they see shapes there? It might be looking at the shape of a swing. It might be a triangle, the stand. So just literally, when you're out with your child, be looking at, where are the opportunities for us to be counting? Where are the opportunities for us to be looking at shape? Might it be that we can look at, let's see how many triangles we can find, and then when we go home, let's look at triangles. Then we might be saying, but not all triangles are the same, because we might have a triangle that's got equal size. We might have a triangle that's got a much longer side. And getting children to understand that a triangle has 3 sides and 3 corners, but it might be different shapes. So there's so much maths that you can actually see just from going from a walk. So it might also be things like looking at the, if you've got a puddle on the ground, sometimes you might not have that much in Abu Dhabi, but you could make your own. So make a puddle in the back on concrete, and draw circle around it with chalk, draw around the puddle, and then come back an hour later and draw around the puddle again, and look at how the shape gets smaller as the water evaporates. So we can have that discussion with children about that puddle, but it might be things like, can you jump in the puddle? Can you walk around the puddle? Again, if you're down by the pool, can you jump in the pool? Can we walk around the pool? Can you take 3 steps and then jump in? So just making it a game, but jumping in, jumping over, walking backwards, walking forwards, all of those things, just literally being outside and looking at what you can see that's mathematical in the environment and making it fun. And it's literally about walking and talking to your children. It might be things like lots of board games are absolutely brilliant for children. So things like snakes and ladders, they can learn about basic counting. They can recognize the numbers on the dice. Children often recognize, say, the number 5. They see the way it's set out on a dice and they realize that that's number 5. The interesting thing is that if you then rearrange the order and maybe draw a line of 5, sometimes it takes a while for children to realize that that's 5, but so is that, because they get used to seeing it in a certain shape. And it's good for children to jig things around. So it might be, for example, you count out 5 things, 5 biscuits or something like that, put them on the table and say to your child, how many biscuits are there? And they count. And then you, same biscuits, you move them around a different shape and say, how many biscuits are there now? And at first, the child will have to recount because they don't realize that it stays 5. Older children might look at you and go, well, it's still 5. But younger children have to learn that sometimes 5s look different. It might be then you tell them they're allowed to eat one of those cookies. And then you say, okay, then we had 5 and you've eaten one. How many have we got now? And they might count, or they might be able to tell you straight away it's 4. And you can say, yes, we have 4 now because 1 less than 5 is 4. So it's just dropping that kind of conversation in. 1 less than 5 is 4. If you hadn't eaten that, how many would we have? We'd have 5 because 1 more than 4 is 5. So talking about more than, less than, makes a big difference to the children. There's lots of cards that you can play with numbers, and children just think it's a game. I'm trying to remember, my grandson has one, is it called Sky Joe, I think it's called? And he, even at 5, is looking at negative numbers and things because they can add them together and it's the person with the lowest number at the end. And he's got very good at manipulating numbers. And a lot of that is because he's been playing that card game. So it's looking at games. Blockless is another one where you can put shapes together to cover the board, and the child's got to really make a decision about where to put certain shapes to make sure that his opposition doesn't fill the board before him. So having a look at some of those games that are still fun for children, because it's not about doing more homework, it's looking at the fun games and activities we can do that help children learn. Another thing that we might do is doing the laundry. And this is an interesting one because there's so much maths in actually doing the washing. Who would have believed it? So things like actually asking the children to help you sort it. So you might say to the children, well, I'm going to put some dark colors in together, and I'm going to put light colors in together, and I'm going to put bright colors in together. Who can help me do that? And actually asking the children to help you throw the dirty washing into the right piles. So they're actually sorting and thinking about, again, as I said, categorizing things. We might then say, who's got the most washing? So they have to decide, looking at the washing, if it's mommy, if it's daddy, if it's their sister, their brother, looking at who's got the biggest pile of washing. So now they're making comparisons quantitatively. And then things like, if you can throw it into the bucket where the dark clothes are going, if it goes in the bucket, you get 2 points. If it hits the bucket and doesn't stay in, you get 1 point. So you're actually then collating how much they get. They then can start with when the washing's done, they might help you hang it up. If they help you hang it up, you might say, oh, can we get 2 socks up there? And they have to look for the corresponding pair. They then have to peg it on, and pegging is actually good for teaching them about that grip, about how they will hold a pencil or a pen. Using that actual grip to do the socks is a really good one. They can help hang the washing up. They can also help fold it up. And when you start folding up washing, especially things like towels, children can start learning about symmetry. So you can say, if you fold that corner to that corner, what shape do we get now? So much learning just in doing the maths. Then they can also start saying, well, who do those clothes belong to? And they can start sorting the clothes into a pile for different people. Lots of things that we can do in maths just from doing the washing. Another thing that might be nice is looking at Play-Doh or making cookie dough and using shape cutters. So the children can cut out circles, stars, squares. Cooking and baking with your children is a fantastic mathematical experience because they're looking at weights, and you can ask them to, you know, how many spoonfuls do you think we will need to make this weight? How many eggs do we need? We're making this for 4 people. If we were making it for 8 people, how much would we need? So actually the mathematical operations in cooking are extensive. So actually, if you get the chance to actually cook with your children, if you can cope with flour and things everywhere, do it, because it really helps them. Even with small children, you can do things with cup measuring, which make it very easy for them to be scooping in the right amount of flour or sugar, those kind of things. Meal times is a good one. So actually asking them to help you set the table and saying, if there's 4 of us, how many knives will we need? How many forks will we need? How many glasses we would need? What would happen if we invited your friend to stay for dinner? How many would we need then? And so they're actually having to multiply, working out how many of each things they would need. They're counting, they're setting them out in small groups. So again, lots of maths to be learned there. Doing the shopping is another really good one, or more accurately, putting the shopping away. It might be when you're shopping, you might be out and about saying to the child, could you pass me that? Could you pass me that? And you can make comments about the shapes of the containers as you put them into the trolley. So what shape is that cereal box? What shape is that box of crisps? What shape is the bottle of milk? What shape is the yogurt? What shape is Toblerone chocolate, which is a triangular prism, which is a good one for children to see something different. So asking them to look at different shapes while you're shopping, but then starting to look at the properties of the shapes. So for example, if you've bought some canned tomatoes, then looking in the cupboard and saying to the children, how shall we stack them? Shall we stack them on the round end? Shall we stack them on the flat end? Do you think we'll be able to get 2 tins on top of each other, or do you think we can only get 1? So they're estimating, they're looking closely at the shapes and how they can fit them in the cupboard. And it might be that you allow the children to actually try to do that, to see how they can get shapes in, which shapes stack on other shapes, and how you can do that. And it might just be a bit of trial and error. Say, might give them a box and say, okay, then I'd like you to get as many things in that box as you can. Let's see how you do. So they're experimenting and having a go. Outdoor obstacle course is a fantastic one. You could do this in the garden, you could do it in the park, and just have lots of obstacles and things that the children have to go over. Now, this might be around the park. So you might say to the child, I want you to start at that corner of the park, and I'd like you to go on, swing 3 times on the swing, then run up the slide, climb along the balance frame. So you're planning a little course for them, and so you ask them to do that. So it might be then you can talk about the shape of the course. So it might be, say, I want you to go round in a circle, or I'd like you to go around in a triangle or a square. Then it might be that you could give them directions. So you might say, I would like you to turn right or turn left or run forwards. So they're learning all of those directions. They're learning about how far to turn. It might be, so that with that, we're learning about positional language. So it might be, I'd like you to start next to the slide. I'd like you to run forward to the swing. And actually they're having to remember those instructions. We can then make it more exciting by timing it. So we can have a stopwatch on our watches and say, right, how long does it take you to do that? And the children can get excited about seeing if they can improve their scores. We then might draw a map of the course. You might go home and draw a map of what they did. You might also measure the length of the course so they can get a ruler or a tape and see how far their course is. So the possibilities for making a little obstacle course fun and enjoyment, but the maths that are in there, it can be huge. So it's just about using your imagination and having lots of different goals with that. Things like having a target at home, could be a bucket, and it could be throwing socks into it. How many socks can you get into the bucket? How many are in the bucket? How many are outside the bucket? And it might be, we say, right, we've got five bean bags. Have your 5 goals. How many are inside? How many are outside? How many altogether? So you're still looking at the number 5, and they're experimenting with the points they can get. With older children, you can have more complicated targets. So it might be that you still have the bucket, but they have to go through the legs of a chair to get there. The children can design their own targets to try and make it difficult. So lots of things that we can do with maths for that one. Let's have a look at some English activities. Quite often we have, actually, does anybody want to ask anything or suggest anything about some of the maths we've talked about? No? Please, as I say, feel free to do that. We've got plenty of time to talk and ask any questions. Actually, just before we move on to English, I've got another couple of, well, an activity to show you here. And in the handouts for this week, some of them are activities like this one that I'm going to show you, and you've got the resources to be able to print out and make these activities for your children. This activity is for children who are maybe 7 or 8, so getting to the top limit of our age group. And with this one, you can easily make these. So what we've got is true and false cards. And what you have is you give your children these. So you might start at one end of the room, so they've got to do a little bit of moving around. So at the end where the child is, they have the 2 true and false cards. At the other end of the room, or the other end of the garden, or wherever you want to do this, and depending on how far you want your children to run, you have some number calculations. So we have this one. And children have got to work out if that answer is true or if it's false. So they run to the other end of the room, they pick up the question, they bring it back, they have a look and they decide if it's true or if it's false. If they're doing this with a friend, it's quite good because then they have to have a discussion about why do we think it's right, why do we think it's wrong. And I think that's a good thing for you as a parent. Don't just say, oh, good, you got it right. Ask, or, oh, no, that's wrong. Ask them how they worked it out. Ask them how they did that. How do you know that's right? So they actually have to talk you through the maths involved in doing that. And what we call that reasoning. And actually children need to get very good at explaining how they've worked something out. And sometimes working with a partner can help that. So let's see, another one. Is it true or is it false? So you get the idea, they're going to run backwards and forwards and they're going to do those sums. So it could be something that your child brings home for homework. You look at the kind of thing they're learning about, then you could make some little cards like that with some of the right answers on and some of the that are a little bit wrong maybe. Sometimes I find, for example, children when they start learning about place value. So that means when they start looking at hundreds, tens and units, things like when a child first learns about 320, they might write down 30020 because they write the whole number 300. They don't know that actually once it's in the hundreds column, you only need to write the 3, and then the tens and the units will come in. So I sometimes deliberately put some in like that I know are things that children often get wrong and don't understand, just to make them start thinking about it. So there are some games and activities in the pack for you to actually look at and play with your children. And as I say, adapt and do things that your children are doing in school. Let's look at some English then. Let's look at magnetic letters. We often have magnetic letters at home that we can play with our children. They're often stuck in our fridge doors, those kind of things. And what I'd like you to think about is, what can we do with these magnetic letters? So things like, if you put a magnet on a string on the end of a stick, can the children fish the magnetic letters out of a bowl, and what can they do with them? Can they fish for their name? So actually then they're looking for the letters that are in their name, but then they actually have to have the physical dexterity to actually fish those letters out. Or it might be when they're first learning to write words, we teach them very simple words. So they might learn sat, and then it's looking at, can they fish out the letters to make the word sat? But then we might look at, can they think of another word that sounds like sat or rhymes with sat? So it might be mat. Can they fish out another letter that would make a word that rhymes with sat or sounds like sat, just by changing the first letter? So just those little games that can make a difference. We might also say, what letter have you picked? And then say, what sound does that letter make? So if they've picked out a B, what sound does that make? It makes a B, B. If they pick out a C, it makes a K, K, K. Because especially in English, they need to know the sounds that the words make, which is different to the names of the letters, which for some children at first is really quite difficult. So the more practice they can get with playing with words and sounds, the better it is for them. When children are first learning to read, they start learning about print. Now, I'm sure that quite a lot of your children, if you cut up some supermarket signs or some common signs that they see around a lot, so it might be, for example, cutting up some of these and putting them at one end of the room and then saying to the child, run and get the spinny sign for me. And your child can run, they can choose it. Run and get the Waitrose sign or the Carrefour sign or whatever the big supermarkets are that you have there. So the children are getting excited because they're reading in a way, might be the word taxi because they see it a lot, but things that could be stop on a sign, anything like that they might recognize, that they see a lot. And you can encourage them to go, because this is the emergence of reading. This is getting interested in seeing words and knowing that you understand what those words mean. You might not know all the letters, but you can go and pick out the spinny sign because you've seen it and you recognize the logo in the print. Another thing that we might do with our magnetic letters is that we could hide them. So you could hide them around the room, you could hide them in the garden or in a park, and ask the children if they can find the alphabet. Or they might find the letters of their own name, or they might find some letters to make a word. The possibilities are endless with that one. So it's literally hiding them, letting them find them. Think of a game, depending on how old your children are, what kind of words you want them to find. Obviously, one of the first words they recognize is their own name. So it might be just building up with that first of all. But you can make it as complicated as you want, depending on how old your children are. You can also make it exciting. For example, if you did it in the park, then they're having to climb up and find numbers under the slides or on the swings. And the interesting thing then is that you can start bringing in the positional language again by saying to the child, well, where did you find that one? It was under the slide. It was on the swing. It was beside the merry-go-round. So again, looking at how the more language we can put in there, the better. It might be that we can go on a sound walk. So it might be that you can ask your child to take a cuddly toy and say, right, okay, then at school or at home, we've been looking at the letter K this week. Shall we go for a walk with our teddy and see and all the things that we can find that begin with the letter K? And walking around with your teddy, take it around outside. What can you see? So encouraging the children to look at words and see what they mean. My grandson at the moment has just started school and they're looking at some initial sounds, and he came home and he was saying to me, I've done the letter A. And I said, oh, well, what begins with A then? And he didn't want to tell me. And I said, I know a word that begins with A, zebra. And he went, no, that doesn't begin with an A. Apple begins with an A. And then I said to him, oh, and I think this begins with an A. And he said, yes, it does. So all of those things, the play games, you can play with them, the ones that they know, and throwing in ones that aren't right, just makes it fun and encourages them to play. So you can take your teddy and you can go on a word sound hunt. We can also do things like making letters with scarves. When they start to learn the letters and the shapes of the letters, I'm just going to do it with my hand for the moment. So it might be that we say to them, right, what does the letter A look like? And they can make the letter A with their arms. And then we might say to them, can you make it a great big letter A? So again, they're getting the shape of the A, they're learning about the writing, but they're doing it in a big style. We might do it. Pool noodles are really good for this. I again have my coffee sleeves here. So make it with the big line. And actually that's reminded me something that I forgot in maths. Now I've got my two boxes here. Another good thing for maths, just stepping back, is to put a big poster on the wall with a clock and actually getting children to learn the time by making themselves the pointers. So it might be that you say, I would like you to make 3 o'clock, and it's 0:00 and it goes out for the 3, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and you can change that depending on how old your child is. So it could be 5 past or 20 minutes past, any of those kind of things that we can change. Oh, thank you, Nishat. So then one of the things that children often like doing, and I used to do this with my grandson in Dubai, was write a shopping list. And we say, right, we're going to do, I used to try and link it to baking, and he used to love cooking. We say, right, what are we going to cook? He used to love making these chocolate cookies. He absolutely loved making them. I've got to say that they didn't taste that great, but he loved it. He was really proud of these cookies. So he would, we would write the shopping list, and we would go down to the supermarket to buy the ingredients for his chocolate cookies. So he would then get the pen, would get really excited. And even though he didn't actually know how to write, he would write a list and he would tell me what everything on the list was. So he would say, that's the flour, Nonna, that's the cocoa, those are the sprinkles. So he knew exactly what he wanted to say. And that's the emergence of writing for children, getting them interested and excited about writing, but giving them a purpose for it. So if I had said to him in the house, write me a list, he would have said, why? But the fact that he was writing his own shopping list was exciting for him, and it gave him a real purpose to do that. It's things like sending a postcard. He might send a card or a birthday card to someone. There's a purpose in doing it. Another thing that you can do, and you've got a fantastic opportunity there, because if children get wet, it doesn't matter so much. Painting the wall is a fantastic one for English. So you might do it with a broom, and they're literally going up and down, painting patterns on the wall with water, which will dry up very quickly. But by doing that, we're getting the movement for writing, we're getting the strength in their shoulders, and we talked about how important that was. So they can go that way, they can go that way, they can write the letters on the wall. But by having that outside for them, it's really exciting, and all you need is a big wall and some water. And obviously that will dry out. But it's really good fun for the children and very good for their exercise, for their strength, but really good for letter formation, getting their arms and shoulders to work well. Another one, sticking with water, buckets. If you have lots of different size buckets that your children can play out with and play with water. So it might be having a big bucket or a tap where they can fill it, refill, and looking at the different amounts of water. If you have about 5 different size buckets, and then you can do so much maths with the different buckets, saying things like, how many of the small buckets will it take to fill the next bucket? How many of those buckets will it take to fill? Do you think, how heavy would the big bucket be? Which one would be the heaviest? Would lots of water in the small bucket be heavier than not much water in the other bucket? So getting children to estimate and see, but they can play for hours with the water, and giving them lots of different size containers. And sometimes children think because they're tall that they contain the most water, and actually comparing a tall container to a wide container and getting children to think how much they think they contain, and then working it out. You can use things like egg cups. How many egg cups would it take to fill that one? Where are 10 egg cups in there compared to 10 egg cups in there? So they're counting, they're measuring, and they're working out capacity by being able to just play and try out lots of different things. You could go collecting sticks or bits from nature, and I have a grandson who lives here, and we go in the forest and we collect lots of sticks, and then he comes back and he might make letters with the sticks, or he might make numbers with the sticks, or sometimes I will make numbers with the sticks and put them around the garden and say to him, oh, can you go and find a number 5, or can you find a number 6? So they're making things from nature, but they can then make them. So it might be that I say to him, get some sticks, make me the number 5, or show me what 5 sticks looks like. So they're actually making the quantity, not the shape of the letter. So again, that's teaching them about being able to recognize a number. The complicated word for it is subitizing, but that means that they just need to look at a number and know immediately how much it is. And the more children can do that and practice that, the better it is for them. Shadow sticks is a nice one. We can put sticks in the ground, and with some playground chalk, we can actually draw the shadows. And then we can look at different times of the day and draw the shadows again and talk to the children about when was it longest, when was it shortest. Again, why do you think that is? So we're just bringing learning to life with things that children can actually see. So it makes it much more exciting for them. Measuring, they can do a lot of measuring with hands. So draw around the hand and then cut around that hand, and then say to them, right, let's measure things in the house with your hands. How many of your hands does the table take? And they can put the hand down and they can move it, keep measuring it. How many hands across is the door? So just letting them measure, do lots of different things. Then again, those big squirter guns full of water that children love, find a wall, write a letter while squirting the water. You could do that in a pool. So making the letters again, practicing the letter shapes, lots of different things they can do with that. Let's see, active storytelling. This is a nice one in that you can get children, really improve children's listening skills. So what they have to do is listen very carefully for the words in a story. Now, this isn't a bedtime story because it will wake them up and make them way too excited, but you could do this active listening with another one. And what I tend to do is find a very short story. And the one I'm going to share with you is The Boy Who Cried Wolf. And I just downloaded this from the internet. It's very, very short. But the idea is starting off with maybe a couple of words and then increasing them. You ask the child to listen to the story, and as soon as they hear one of those words, they have to do the actions. So the actions for mine, I will show you. When they hear the word help, they have to do a star jump. When they hear the word wolf, they have to stand up and make a scary face. When they hear the word shepherd, they have to stand on one leg. When they hear the word villagers, if there's more than one, they have to get in a group. If there isn't more than one, they have to find a cuddly toy to make a group. And sheep means getting down into that position on their hands and knees. So they learn those 5 movements. And then the story goes, once there was a shepherd boy who had to look after a flock of sheep. So we have to get down and make the sheep. Then the children will sit again. One day he felt bored and decided to play a trick on the villagers. And that's when you get the cuddly toy to make a small group. He shouted, "Help! Help! Wolf! Wolf!" Get the idea? And then it goes on. The villagers heard his cries and ran out to help the shepherd boy. And there's so much activity just from a very, very short story. The children love it, but it's fantastic for the listening skills. And it gets them out of puff and being physically active. And one of the things you can tell that I'm a little out of puff just for doing that first couple of lines. What we've got to think about is when we've talked about children being very sedentary now, is that sometimes children very rarely get out of puff anymore. And it's important that they do. Some young children will say to me, "Oh, I can't do that. I'm having an asthma attack." And they're not. They're just tired out and they don't know what that feels like anymore. So, you know, our bodies are meant to get puffed out occasionally. It's very good for our heart and for our health. So children should be doing activities that do get them out of puff. Another nice activity is called Dance the Word. And with this one, the idea is that children are learning prefixes that will change the meaning of a word. So it might be you play some music and then you shout out a word and then the children have to move like that word. But then you say the prefix and it changes the word and children have to act like that. So if I give you an example, we'd have the music on, we'd be dancing around, you stop the music and I say happy. And the children have to move around as if they're happy. And then I say unhappy. And they have to move around as if they're not so happy. Then things like friendly. So you move, you're friendly, you're happy. And then unfriendly. So actually you're getting children to think about the opposites and you're actually asking them to move around in a way they think that works. Actually, there's a really nice book called The Colour Monster, which helps children learn about emotions. And in that one, there's a little monster, and depending on what mood he is in, he changes the colour. So if he's happy, he's yellow. If he's sad, he's blue. If he's scared, he's black. If he's angry, he's red. And you can actually be starting to say to children, are you getting a little, do you think you're turning a little bit red? What might we do to help you? How could we help you calm down? Or saying, are you feeling a little bit blue today? What could we do that might make you happy? So actually getting children to be able to talk about their emotions and act out their emotions. How do you act when you're angry? You might stomp and throw things. You might just, when you're sad, you might walk around slowly and quietly. So it gives children that opportunity to talk about emotions. One of the last things that I would like to do is talk about a couple of books and I did show you some pictures of some books in one of the sessions, but some of the storybooks are really good. We've looked at that active story of jumping around, listening to the words, but lots of other books can give us just some ideas of ways to help children move. And if you think about our object control, locomotion and stability, let's just have a think about some of these books and how they would work with those. This is one of my favorite, absolute favorite books, Giraffes Can't Dance. And if you think about this, it's got stickers on it where teachers have used it and put in some ideas. But if I read a couple of pages, we can then see how we might use it. So the first one says, Gerald was a tall giraffe whose neck was long and slim, but his knees were awfully bandy and his legs were rather thin. So straight away on the first page, Gerald was a tall giraffe. Who can show me what tall's like? Who can walk around like a tall giraffe? These aren't made for movement books, but you can certainly make them. He was very good at standing still and munching shoots off trees. So what I tend to do with this one is standing still massively lends itself to stability. So standing still, I do standing on one leg. He's very good at standing still. And then sometimes if I have a beanbag and a couple of children, then I ask one to hold the beanbag and the person who's standing on one leg has to bend down to eat the shoots off the trees. So the leaf moves around and it challenges the balance. You might, if we wanted to put in across the midline, put the leaf over to this side and have to go and get it. So again, gives us lots of opportunities. Then, but when he tried to run around, he buckled at the knees. Now, every year in Africa, they hold a jungle dance where every single animal turns up to skip and prance. So we have huge amounts again, skipping, prancing, and then, and this year when the day arrived, I'll show you, this year when the day arrived, poor Gerald felt so sad because when it came to dancing, he was really very bad. Now, this is where you can talk to children about how does it feel like if you're not very good at something. If we want them to have a growth mindset, we want them to understand that they have to try hard and they have to keep trying and not give up straight away. This is a lovely story for that. So then it goes into the warthogs started waltzing and the rhinos rock and roll. The lions danced a tango, which was elegant and bold. Now, what we can do there with younger children is we can find the different music. What does waltzing music sound like? How would you move if you heard that? What does rock and roll sound like? What does a tango sound like? And it goes all the way through for a cha-cha and a Scottish reel, all sorts of different things in here. Just from a child's storybook that you would find easily in a bookshop, might have it at school. Another one that is used quite a lot with children is We're Going on a Bear Hunt. You might have heard that one. I couldn't find my copy of Bear Hunt, but I do have one that's almost exactly the same. That's We're Going on a Lion Hunt. So it's very similar if we're thinking about the movements. So we might have We're going on a lion hunt. We're going to catch a big one. And then we can move all of the big actions. We're not scared. We've been there before. We're going on a lion hunt. We'll do it again. We're going to catch a big one. We're We're not scared. Been there before? Oh no. Long grass. Can't go over it. We can't go under it. Can't go around it. We'll have to go through it. Swish, swash, swish. So for that one, we have all the movements, the big, the not scared, long grass, but then we have all that beautiful positional language that we need for English and for maths. Over it, under it, around it, through it. So we can use lots of those different ones. Can't go through the lake. We have to go through it. Splish, splash, splish, splash. You could do this by the pool. And you have the opportunity to be able to get in there, do all the playing. So you can bring these books to life for children. Last one, Superworm is a very nice one as well. And Superworm has a lot of repetition in it. So children can learn and listen with you when they're reading it. And then when they get to the bit that's repeated, they can start joining in. And what I sometimes do is read part of the sentence and then expect the child to fill in the end. So this one has a little chorus. So it might, for what we would do with this one, Superworm is super long. Superworm is super strong. Watch him wiggle, watch him squirm. Hooray, hooray for Superworm. So every time the children hear that bit in the story, they get up and they do the movements. And Superworm has hopping. He turns himself into a rope. There's the skipping rope. Oops. He goes fishing. All sorts of different things in there. So it really is about how you can bring things to life for your children, talking with them. The more you talk to children, neuroscientists call it serve and return. The more you engage with your children, the more you laugh and joke and giggle with them, the better off they will be. So hopefully these sessions have given you lots of different ideas to go away and play with your children, ways that you can make learning fun, ways that you can make them physically literate. So please, and this is your last chance. We literally have a couple of minutes left. I've really enjoyed doing these sessions with you. So any comments, any questions, please feel free. We've had one, so Nishat Ahmed, thank you very much for your contribution. Let's see if we can have something from anyone else about what you've learned and what you're going to do with it. Brilliant, thank you, Nishat. You have 2 comments now. Come on, everyone. If we're counting in maths, she's 2 ahead of you. I'm glad it's giving you some ideas, Nishat, that we can go away and use. Any more questions, comments? Well, as I say, I hope you enjoy going away and trying some of these activities with your children. And I look forward to seeing lots of physically literate children playing around in Abu Dhabi when I eventually get to visit again. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Nishat. Thank you, everyone.